settle into the sleepy mind channel. Today, we will explore one of the oldest cities ever discovered beneath the sea, a place where streets, homes, and courtyards still rest quietly under clear Mediterranean water. Beneath the shallow coastline of southern Greece lies a city that has not disappeared, but instead has been gently preserved by time itself. Pavlopetri is not buried under sand or hidden beneath jungle. It is visible, calm, and almost untouched, resting just below the surface, where sunlight still reaches the stone streets. What makes it remarkable is not only that it is underwater, but that it may be one of the earliest examples of a fully organized city ever found. Unlike places that were destroyed suddenly, Pavlopetri faded slowly. The land changed, the shoreline shifted, and the sea gradually moved inward. Over time, buildings that once stood on dry ground became part of the seabed. This slow transformation means that the layout of the city remains clear, offering a rare and detailed view into how people lived thousands of years ago, without the disruption that often erases or distorts ancient settlements. If you like videos like these, feel free to like and subscribe. More videos are posted weekly. Pavlopetri is located along the southern coast of Greece, in shallow waters that are calm and clear. The Mediterranean here is gentle, allowing the remains of the city to be seen even from above. The water is not deep, which makes the site especially unusual, as many ancient ruins beneath the sea are hidden far below the surface. In contrast, Pavlopetri feels close, almost within reach, as though it has only just slipped beneath the water and remained suspended in time. The city itself dates back several thousand years, reaching into a time when early human settlements were beginning to organize into more structured communities. This was a period when people were moving beyond simple villages and beginning to create spaces that were planned and arranged with intention. Pavlopetri reflects this shift clearly, showing that even at this early stage, humans were already thinking about how to organize their surroundings in a way that supported daily life and long-term stability. As you move through the layout of the city, what stands out immediately is the presence of streets. These are not random paths formed by repeated movement, but defined routes that connect different parts of the settlement. Streets suggest planning, and planning suggests a level of organization that goes beyond simple habitation. It indicates that the people who lived here were thinking ahead, shaping their environment rather than simply adapting to it, and creating connections between homes, shared spaces, and areas of activity. Alongside these streets are the remains of buildings, each with its own defined space. The structures were built with stone foundations, giving them stability and durability. Even now, long after the city has been submerged, these foundations remain visible, outlining the shape of homes and shared areas. The presence of courtyards suggests that space was not only functional, but also communal, allowing for interaction, shared tasks, and the rhythms of daily life to unfold within a structured environment. The layout of Pavlopetri shows that this was not a temporary settlement. It was a place designed for continued living, where people built homes, established routines, and created a sense of structure within their environment. The organization of buildings into sections or blocks reflects a level of planning that is often associated with much later periods, making Pavlopetri especially significant in understanding how early cities developed and how early communities began to think in terms of long-term settlement. Originally, the city was built on land close to the coastline. This location provided access to both land and sea, creating opportunities for a wide range of activities. The surrounding area would have supported basic needs such as food and shelter, while the nearby water opened the possibility for movement, trade, and connection with other regions. Being close to the sea was not only practical, but also strategic, allowing the settlement to become part of a wider network of coastal communities. At the time Pavlopetri was active, the coastline looked different from what it does today. Over long periods, natural processes gradually reshaped the land. Sea levels rose slowly, following the end of the last ice age, and coastal erosion changed the shape of the shoreline. These changes were not sudden, but steady and continuous, altering the environment little by little and gradually shifting the balance between land and sea. As the water moved closer, the city began to experience the effects of this shifting landscape. Areas that were once dry became damp and eventually submerged. The people living there may have adapted at first, adjusting their routines as conditions changed and making use of the resources still available to them. But over time, the transformation would have made daily life increasingly difficult, as more of the land was lost to the advancing water. This gradual change is what makes Pavlopetri different from cities lost to sudden events. There was no single moment of destruction. Instead, the city transitioned from land to sea over an extended period, allowing its structure to remain largely intact. This slow process preserved the layout in a way that sudden collapse or abandonment often does not, leaving behind a clear and readable imprint of how the city once functioned. The environment that once supported the city ultimately became the force that reshaped it. The same proximity to the sea that allowed for trade and connection also made it vulnerable to long-term environmental change. As the water continued to rise, the settlement could no longer function as it once had, and the balance that had supported life there slowly disappeared. Eventually, the people who lived there would have moved on, leaving behind the structures they had built. Without ongoing human activity, the city became part of the natural landscape. The sea covered it, and sediment settled across the streets and buildings, gently protecting them from erosion and disturbance, while preserving their shape beneath the surface. What remains today is a quiet and remarkably clear outline of an early city. Streets still connect different areas, buildings still define spaces, and the overall structure remains readable beneath the water. Pavlopetri offers a rare opportunity to observe how early communities organized themselves, how they interacted with their environment, and how natural forces gradually reshaped their world over time. In the next part, we will move deeper into the layout of the city, exploring how its streets, buildings, and shared spaces were arranged to support daily life, and what this reveals about the people who once lived there. As the outline of Pavlopetri becomes clearer, the arrangement of its streets and buildings begins to reveal how the city functioned as a living environment. The layout is not scattered or accidental. It reflects intention, with defined routes and organized spaces that suggest careful planning. This structure provides insight into how early communities created order within their surroundings and how that order supported daily life. The streets form the foundation of the city's design. They connect different areas in a way that allows movement to flow naturally between homes, shared spaces, and places of activity. These routes are wide enough to suggest regular use, and their consistent direction indicates that they were deliberately placed rather than formed over time through repeated travel. This level of organization shows that the people who built Pavlopetri understood the importance of structure in supporting a functioning settlement. The arrangement of buildings alongside these streets further strengthens this sense of planning. Structures are positioned in a way that creates defined sections, almost like blocks, where groups of homes and spaces are organized together. This creates a sense of neighborhood within the city, where each area has its own identity while still being connected to the larger whole. It suggests that the settlement was not only designed for practicality, but also for a shared way of living. Within these sections, courtyards appear as central features. These open spaces would have served as gathering points, where daily tasks could be carried out and where people could interact with one another. Courtyards provide light, space, and a place for activity, making them an important part of the overall design. Their presence shows that the city was built with both function and social interaction in mind, allowing residents to share space while maintaining structure. Homes within Pavlopetri were built with clear boundaries, indicating private living spaces for families or small groups. The stone foundations define these areas, showing where walls once stood and where rooms were arranged. These homes were not temporary shelters, but stable structures designed for ongoing use. The use of stone suggests durability, while the layout of each space reflects the needs of those who lived there. Daily life within the city would have followed a steady rhythm shaped by the environment and the layout itself. People would move along the streets, passing through shared areas and returning to their homes. Tasks such as preparing food, maintaining living spaces, and managing resources would have taken place within these defined structures. The organization of the city supported these routines, allowing daily activities to unfold in a predictable and manageable way. The connection between land and sea played a central role in shaping how people lived in Pavlopetri. Being close to the coastline meant that residents could rely on both terrestrial and marine resources. This created a balanced way of life, where activities on land were complemented by opportunities provided by the sea. The layout of the city reflects this connection, with access routes that likely led toward the shoreline. Trade would have been an important part of daily activity, linking Pavlopetri to other nearby settlements. Goods could move along the coast, carried by simple vessels or transported across short distances on land. The position of the city made it a natural point of connection, allowing it to participate in a wider network of exchange. This would have brought not only resources, but also ideas and interactions from other communities. The organization of the city also suggests a level of cooperation among its residents. Shared spaces, structured streets, and connected buildings all require a degree of collective effort to create and maintain. This indicates that the people of Pavlopetri were not living in isolation, but as part of a coordinated community where individuals contributed to the overall functioning of the settlement. Architecture within the city reflects the materials and techniques available at the time. Stone was used to create strong foundations, providing stability and resistance to natural wear. The design of the buildings focuses on practicality, with defined spaces that could support daily needs. While the structures may appear simple, their consistency and organization reveal a thoughtful approach to construction. The placement of buildings in relation to one another suggests that space was used efficiently. Rather than spreading out without pattern, the city is arranged in a way that maximizes the available area. This allows for movement, interaction, and access to resources without unnecessary distance between different parts of the settlement. It shows an understanding of how to create a compact and functional living environment. As the city developed, its layout would have influenced how people experienced their surroundings. The presence of clear routes and organized spaces would make navigation straightforward, allowing residents to move with ease between different areas. This sense of structure reduces uncertainty and creates a stable environment where daily life can continue without disruption. Over time, the routines of the people living in Pavlopetri would become closely tied to the layout of the city itself. The streets guide movement, the buildings define space, and the courtyards bring people together. This relationship between environment and behavior is a key feature of early urban development, showing how physical structure can shape the way a community functions. The combination of planning, architecture, and daily activity creates a picture of a city that was both practical and connected. Pavlopetri was not simply a place to live, but a place designed to support a way of life. Its structure reflects the needs of its residents, while its organization reveals the presence of shared understanding and cooperation. Even now, beneath the water, this structure remains visible. The streets still trace their paths, the buildings still outline their spaces, and the courtyards still mark areas of gathering. The clarity of this layout allows it to be studied and understood in a way that many other ancient sites cannot, offering a direct view into how early cities were designed and lived in. We will explore how Pavlopetri connected to wider trade networks and how its position along the coastline shaped its role within the ancient world. As Pavlopetri continued to develop, its position along the coastline became one of its greatest strengths. The city was not isolated, but connected to a wider world through the movement of goods, people, and ideas. Its location along the southern coast of Greece placed it within reach of other settlements, creating opportunities for interaction that extended beyond its immediate surroundings. The sea acted as a natural pathway, allowing travel to occur more easily than over land. Even in early periods, coastal movement was an efficient way to connect distant communities. Small vessels could follow the shoreline, carrying goods between settlements and returning with resources that were not available locally. Pavlopetri, positioned close to calm and accessible waters, would have been well suited to take part in this system. Trade within this network likely involved a range of materials that supported daily life. Coastal communities often exchanged items such as food, crafted goods, and raw materials. These exchanges allowed each settlement to benefit from the strengths of others, creating a shared system where resources could be distributed more evenly. Pavlopetri would have contributed to this network while also relying on it to meet certain needs. The presence of organized streets and defined spaces within the city suggests that movement and exchange were part of its design. Goods arriving from the shoreline could be transported through the streets to storage areas or homes. The layout of the city would have supported this flow, allowing materials to move efficiently from one point to another without disrupting daily life. Being part of a trade network also meant that Pavlopetri was connected to ideas as well as materials. Contact with other settlements would bring new techniques, knowledge, and ways of organizing life. These influences could shape how the city developed over time, contributing to its structure and the way its community functioned. Trade, in this sense, was not only economic, but also cultural. The coastline itself played a key role in shaping these interactions. Natural features, such as sheltered bays and gentle shorelines, would make certain areas more suitable for landing and departure. Pavlopetri's location suggests that it had access to such features, allowing vessels to approach and leave with relative ease. This would make it a practical point within the wider network of coastal movement. As goods moved in and out of the city, they would become part of the daily routines of its residents. Materials brought from other regions could be used in construction, food preparation, or crafting. In return, items produced within Pavlopetri could be shared with neighboring communities. This exchange created a sense of connection that extended beyond the boundaries of the city itself. The organization of the settlement supports the idea that these activities were regular and expected. Streets provided clear routes for movement, while open spaces allowed for handling and distribution. The structure of the city was not only about living, but also about managing the flow of resources. This reflects a level of planning that takes into account both internal needs and external connections. Over time, participation in a wider network would strengthen the position of Pavlopetri within the region. Regular interaction builds familiarity, and familiarity builds stability. As connections became established, the city would become a recognized point within the network, known for its location and its role in the movement of goods along the coastline. The relationship between Pavlopetri and other settlements would not have been equal in all directions. Some areas may have been closer or more accessible, creating stronger connections. Others may have been further away, visited less frequently. This variation creates a pattern of interaction where certain routes become more important over time based on ease of travel and the value of exchange. Trade also requires a level of trust and coordination. For goods to move between communities, there must be an understanding of exchange and mutual benefit. This suggests that the people of Pavlopetri were part of a broader system of cooperation, where agreements and expectations allowed interactions to take place smoothly. Even in early periods, these systems could form the foundation of larger networks. The influence of the sea on this process cannot be overstated. The same waters that provided access and opportunity also shaped the rhythm of movement. Calm conditions would allow travel, while changes in weather could delay or limit activity. This creates a pattern where interaction is influenced by the natural environment, reinforcing the connection between human activity and the surrounding landscape. As the city continued to exist within this network, its identity would become linked to its role in these exchanges. It was not only a place where people lived, but also a point of connection within a wider system. This dual role adds depth to our understanding of Pavlopetri, showing that its significance extends beyond its physical structure. Even after the city was gradually submerged, the evidence of these connections remains in its layout. The organization of streets, the positioning of buildings, and the relationship to the coastline all suggest a settlement that was actively engaged with its surroundings. The patterns of movement and exchange are still visible, preserved beneath the water, along with the structures themselves. Today, Pavlopetri offers a quiet record of these interactions. Beneath the surface, the city reflects a time when coastal communities were linked through shared systems of trade and communication. It shows how early settlements were not isolated points, but part of a connected world shaped by both human intention and natural geography. In the next part, we will explore the construction of the city itself, looking more closely at how buildings were designed, how materials were used, and how architecture supported both stability and daily function. As Pavlopetri took shape as a functioning settlement, the methods used to construct its buildings reveal how early communities approached stability, space, and long-term living. The city was not built randomly or with temporary materials alone. Instead, its structures show a consistent approach to construction, where durability and function were carefully balanced to support daily life. The most visible feature of Pavlopetri's construction is the use of stone foundations. These foundations form the base of each structure, outlining the shape of buildings that once stood above them. Stone provides strength and resistance to wear, making it an ideal material for creating stable living spaces. Even after thousands of years beneath the water, these foundations remain intact, preserving the layout of the city with remarkable clarity. The decision to use stone reflects an understanding of permanence. Rather than building structures that would need constant rebuilding, the people of Pavlopetri created foundations designed to last. This suggests that the settlement was intended for long-term occupation, where effort invested in construction would support generations of use rather than short-term needs. Above these stone bases, walls would have been constructed using materials available in the surrounding environment. These may have included lighter stone, earth-based materials, or wood. While these upper elements have not survived in the same way as the foundations, their presence can be inferred from the layout and spacing of the remaining structures. The combination of strong bases and lighter upper construction would allow for both stability and flexibility. The arrangement of rooms within each building reflects practical design. Spaces were likely divided according to function, with areas designated for rest, storage, and daily activity. The separation of these spaces suggests an awareness of how to organize interior environments in a way that supports routine. This level of organization is a key step in the development of structured living. Courtyards, already visible within the layout of the city, also play an important role in construction. These open areas are not enclosed like rooms, but instead provide space for light and air to circulate. In a coastal environment, this would help maintain comfort within surrounding structures. Courtyards also create a central point within a group of buildings, allowing activity to be shared among residents. The positioning of buildings in relation to one another shows careful use of available space. Structures are placed close enough to maintain connection, but with enough separation to allow movement and access. This balance prevents overcrowding, while still keeping the settlement compact. It reflects an understanding of how to organize space efficiently within a limited area. Construction techniques would have been shaped by both knowledge and necessity. The people building Pavlopetri would rely on methods passed down through experience, refining their approach over time. Each structure adds to this process, contributing to a shared understanding of what works and what does not. This gradual improvement leads to more consistent and reliable building practices. The coastal environment would also influence how structures were designed. Proximity to the sea means exposure to moisture, wind, and shifting ground conditions. Buildings would need to account for these factors, using stable foundations and thoughtful placement to reduce the impact of environmental stress. The survival of the stone foundations suggests that these methods were effective in maintaining structural integrity. Paths and access points between buildings are integrated into the construction of the city. Rather than being added later, these routes are part of the original design. This ensures that movement through the settlement is smooth and predictable. It also allows different areas to remain connected without interfering with the structure of individual buildings. Storage would have been an essential part of construction planning. Spaces within homes or nearby areas would be used to keep materials safe and accessible. The organization of these storage areas reflects the need to manage resources carefully, especially in a settlement connected to trade and reliant on both land and sea. This adds another layer to how buildings were designed to support daily life. The overall consistency of construction across the city suggests a shared approach among its residents. Rather than each building being entirely different, there is a sense of pattern and repetition. This indicates that certain methods and designs were commonly understood and applied, creating a cohesive environment where structures fit together as part of a unified whole. As buildings were constructed and maintained over time, they would also be adapted to changing needs. Small adjustments, repairs, and additions would allow the settlement to evolve without losing its overall structure. This flexibility is an important aspect of long-term habitation, allowing the city to respond to both internal and external changes. The materials used in construction would have been gathered from the surrounding region, linking the city directly to its environment. Stone, earth, and other natural resources would be shaped and placed with care, turning raw materials into functional spaces. This process reflects a close relationship between the people of Pavlopetri and the landscape in which they lived. Even now, beneath the water, the remains of these construction methods continue to define the city. The stone outlines of buildings provide a clear map of how space was organized, while the placement of structures reveals the logic behind their design. This level of preservation allows the city to be studied in detail, offering insight into techniques that were used thousands of years ago. Pavlopetri stands as an example of how early communities approached building not just as a necessity, but as a way to create lasting environments. Its structures show that even at this early stage, people were capable of designing spaces that balance strength, function, and organization. The city's construction reflects both practical knowledge and a deeper understanding of how to shape a living environment. As Pavlopetri grew into a stable and organized settlement, the way its people lived together becomes just as important as the structures they built. The layout of the city suggests more than physical planning. It reflects a shared understanding of how a community functions, where cooperation, routine, and connection all play a role in shaping daily life. The arrangement of buildings into defined sections indicates that people did not live in isolation. Instead, Homes were grouped in ways that allowed for interaction while still maintaining individual space. This balance between private and shared areas is a key feature of organized communities, where people rely on one another while also maintaining their own routines. Within these groupings, daily life would unfold in patterns that were both predictable and adaptable. People would wake, move through the streets, and carry out tasks that supported both themselves and the wider settlement. The structure of the city supports this movement, allowing individuals to navigate their environment with ease and consistency. Shared spaces such as courtyards would have played an important role in maintaining social connections. These areas provided a place where people could gather, communicate, and carry out tasks together. Whether preparing food, managing resources, or simply spending time in the presence of others, these shared environments help strengthen the bonds within the community. The presence of organized streets also suggests a level of coordination in how space was used. Movement through the city would not be random, but guided by established routes that connect different areas. This allows people to interact more easily, creating opportunities for communication and cooperation as part of everyday life. Social organization within Pavlopetri would have been shaped by both necessity and environment. Living close to the sea requires awareness of changing conditions, and this awareness would likely be shared among residents. Decisions about resources, movement, and daily activity may have been influenced by this collective understanding, reinforcing the need for cooperation. Roles within the community would naturally emerge based on skills, needs, and available resources. Some individuals may have focused on tasks related to food, others on construction or trade. While these roles may not have been rigidly defined, they would contribute to the overall functioning of the settlement. This division of activity allows the community to operate more efficiently, with each person contributing in a way that supports the whole. The organization of space within the city also reflects this shared responsibility. Buildings are not isolated units, but part of a larger system where proximity allows for interaction and support. This arrangement suggests that the community relied on connection, where individuals were aware of one another and able to respond to changing needs. Communication within the settlement would have been constant, occurring through daily interaction rather than formal systems. The design of the city encourages this, with streets and open spaces bringing people into contact regularly. This ongoing exchange of information helps maintain coordination and allows the community to function smoothly. As the settlement developed, traditions and routines would begin to form. These patterns of behavior create stability, allowing people to anticipate what comes next and respond accordingly. Over time, these routines become part of the identity of the community, shaping how individuals understand their place within it. The environment surrounding Pavlopetri would also influence how the community operated. Access to both land and sea creates a dynamic setting where resources can change over time. This requires flexibility, as people adapt their activities based on what is available. The ability to adjust while maintaining structure is a key feature of a resilient community. The presence of trade connections further expands the social dimension of the settlement. Interaction with other communities introduces new ideas and influences, which may be incorporated into daily life. This exchange adds complexity to the social structure, connecting Pavlopetri to a wider network while still maintaining its own identity. Cooperation within the community would extend beyond immediate needs. The construction and maintenance of the city itself require shared effort, from building structures to managing space. This collective work reinforces the idea that the settlement is a shared responsibility, where each individual contributes to its stability and growth. The layout of Pavlopetri, with its organized streets and grouped buildings, suggests that these patterns of cooperation were embedded into the physical environment. The city was designed in a way that supports interaction, making it easier for people to work together and maintain connections over time. As conditions in the surrounding environment began to change, this sense of community would become even more important. Adapting to shifting coastlines and rising water levels requires awareness and coordination. The ability of the community to respond to these changes would depend on how well its members could communicate and act together. Even after the city was eventually abandoned, the structure of its community remains visible in the layout that still exists beneath the water. The organization of space reflects the relationships between people, showing how they lived, worked, and interacted within a shared environment. Pavlopetri offers a quiet but detailed record of early social organization. It shows that even in early settlements, people were capable of creating systems of cooperation that allowed them to live together in structured and connected ways. The city is not only a collection of buildings, but a reflection of the relationships that once gave it life. The environment surrounding Pavlopetri was never completely still. Even during the time when the city was active and stable, natural processes were quietly shaping the land and sea around it. These changes were gradual, almost unnoticeable in a single lifetime, yet over longer periods they would begin to alter the balance between land and water in ways that would eventually affect the settlement. The coastline near Pavlopetri was part of a dynamic system influenced by both geological and environmental forces. The land itself was not fixed, but subject to slow movement caused by shifts within the earth. These movements could raise or lower sections of land over long periods, changing the relationship between the coastline and the sea. At the same time, the water level was also changing, influenced by broader climatic patterns that extended far beyond the immediate region. After the end of the last ice age, large amounts of frozen water began to melt, contributing to a gradual rise in sea levels across the world. This process did not happen all at once, but unfolded over thousands of years. As the ice melted, the additional water slowly spread into the oceans, raising the level of the sea little by little. For coastal settlements like Pavlopetri, this meant that the boundary between land and water was constantly shifting, even if the movement was too slow to notice from one day to the next. Erosion also played a role in reshaping the coastline. Waves moving steadily against the shore would carry away small amounts of material over time. This process, repeated continuously, could change the shape of the land, smoothing some areas while cutting into others. Although each individual wave has little impact, the cumulative effect over long periods can be significant, gradually softening the edges of the land and pulling it toward the sea. The combination of rising sea levels and ongoing erosion created a slow but persistent change in the environment. Areas that were once stable could begin to feel different, with the edge of the water moving closer than before. For the people living in Pavlopetri, These changes would not have been sudden or dramatic, but they would have been noticeable over time, appearing first as subtle shifts and then as more consistent patterns. Seasonal variations may have also influenced how the environment was experienced. Changes in weather patterns could affect water levels, wind conditions, and the behavior of the sea. During certain periods, the water might appear slightly higher or more active, while at other times it might seem calm and unchanged. These variations would add another layer of complexity, making the environment feel slightly different at different times, even as the long-term trend continued in a steady direction. The land surrounding the city would have responded to these changes in subtle ways. Soil could become more saturated as water levels rose, and areas near the shoreline might begin to soften or shift. This could affect how buildings were supported and how stable certain parts of the settlement remained. Even small changes in ground conditions can influence the durability of structures over time, especially in a coastal setting. The connection between the city and the sea, which once provided opportunity and access, also meant that Pavlopetri was directly exposed to these environmental shifts. Being close to the coastline made daily life easier in many ways, but it also placed the settlement in a position where it would feel the effects of long-term change more directly than inland communities that were further removed from the advancing water. As the water continued to rise, the shoreline would slowly move inward. Paths that once led across dry land toward the sea would shorten, and areas that were previously safe from water would begin to experience occasional flooding. At first, these events might be rare, occurring only under certain conditions, but over time they would become more frequent, gradually altering how space within the settlement could be used. The people living in Pavlopetri may have adapted their routines in response to these changes. Adjustments could include altering how spaces were used, reinforcing certain areas, or shifting activities further from the advancing water. These responses would reflect an awareness of the environment and an attempt to maintain stability within changing conditions, even as the situation slowly evolved. Despite these efforts, the underlying processes driving the change would continue. The gradual nature of sea level rise and erosion means that adaptation can only go so far before conditions begin to limit what is possible. Over time, the balance between land and water would shift enough to begin affecting the core structure of the settlement, changing not just how people lived, but where they could safely remain. The environment does not change with intention, but its effects can reshape human activity in significant ways. In the case of Pavlopetri, the same natural forces that created a favorable coastal setting also carried within them the potential to alter that setting over time. This dual nature of the environment highlights the delicate balance that early settlements had to maintain, where opportunity and risk were closely connected. As more of the land near the city became affected by rising water, the distinction between solid ground and the sea would become less clear. Areas that were once firmly part of the settlement might begin to feel uncertain, with water encroaching in ways that made long-term stability more difficult to maintain. The edges of the city would shift, not in a single moment, but through a series of small changes that gradually reshaped its boundaries. The gradual progression of these changes means that there was no single moment when the city became uninhabitable. Instead, it would have been a process of increasing difficulty, where each small shift added to the overall challenge of maintaining daily life. This slow transition is a key part of understanding how Pavlopetri moved from a functioning settlement to a submerged site. Even now, the evidence of these environmental processes is visible in the position of the city beneath the water. The relationship between the structures and the surrounding sea reflects the long history of change that took place. The city rests not as a result of sudden destruction, but as the outcome of continuous and natural transformation. The story of Pavlopetri's environment is one of steady change, where forces operating over long periods gradually reshape the landscape. It shows how even stable and well-organized settlements remain connected to the larger systems of the Earth, and how those systems can influence the course of human history in quiet but lasting ways. As environmental changes continued to unfold around Pavlopetri, the gradual rise of the sea began to move from a distant process into something more immediate and visible. What had once been subtle shifts in the landscape slowly became part of daily experience, as water began to move further into areas that had previously remained dry. The first signs of encroachment would not have been dramatic. Instead, they likely appeared as small and irregular changes along the edges of the settlement. Low-lying areas may have begun to hold water for longer periods, and ground that was once firm could start to feel softer underfoot. These changes would have been easy to overlook at first, blending into the natural variation of the coastal environment. Over time, however, these patterns would become more consistent. Water would remain in certain areas rather than receding fully, and the boundary between land and sea would begin to shift in a more noticeable way. What had once been occasional conditions would slowly turn into regular features of the landscape, altering how space within the city could be used. As the shoreline advanced inward, access routes within Pavlopetri would begin to change. Paths that once connected different parts of the settlement might become partially flooded, requiring people to adjust how they moved through the city. Movement would become less direct, and familiar routes might need to be avoided or reworked to accommodate the presence of water. Buildings located closer to the original shoreline would be among the first to feel the effects of encroachment. Foundations that had once rested on stable ground could begin to experience increased moisture, weakening the surrounding soil and reducing stability over time. Even if the structures themselves remained intact, the conditions supporting them would gradually shift. Water intrusion into these areas would not necessarily occur all at once. Instead, it would likely happen in stages, with periods of partial flooding followed by brief returns to drier conditions. This pattern could create a sense of uncertainty, where it becomes difficult to determine whether changes are temporary or part of a longer trend. The presence of water within previously dry areas would also affect daily routines. Activities that relied on stable ground might need to be relocated, and certain spaces could become less practical for regular use. Storage areas, workspaces, and shared locations would all be influenced by the changing conditions, requiring ongoing adjustment. As more of the settlement became affected, the distinction between usable space and compromised space would become increasingly important. Residents would need to identify which areas remained reliable and which were becoming less stable. This process would not happen instantly, but through observation and experience as conditions evolved. The encroachment of water would also influence how people interacted with their environment. Awareness of the changing landscape would become part of daily life, shaping decisions about movement, activity, and resource use. This awareness reflects a close connection between the community and its surroundings, where environmental changes are continuously observed and responded to. Over time, the cumulative effect of these changes would begin to reshape the structure of the settlement itself. Areas that were once central to daily life might become less accessible, while others further from the advancing water would take on greater importance. This gradual shift would alter the balance within the city, changing how different spaces were used. The process of encroachment highlights the difference between sudden and gradual change. In the absence of a single defining event, the transformation of Pavlopetri would have been experienced as a series of small adjustments rather than a clear turning point. Each change would build upon the last, creating a slow but steady progression toward a new state. As water continued to move into the settlement, the overall footprint of the city would begin to contract. Areas that could no longer be maintained or used effectively would be left behind, while activity would become concentrated in the remaining stable zones. This shift reflects an attempt to adapt to changing conditions while preserving as much of the settlement as possible. The presence of water within the city would also introduce new challenges related to maintenance and durability. Materials that were once protected from constant moisture would now be exposed to it, potentially accelerating wear and weakening structural integrity. Over time, this would further limit the ability of the community to maintain its built environment. Despite these challenges, the gradual nature of the change may have allowed the people of Pavlopetri to adjust in stages. Rather than facing immediate displacement, they would have experienced a slow transformation that required ongoing adaptation. This process would involve both practical adjustments and shifts in how the settlement was understood and used. Eventually, however, the continued advance of the sea would reach a point where adaptation was no longer sufficient. The balance between land and water would tip too far, and the remaining stable areas would become increasingly limited. At this stage, the settlement would no longer be able to support the same level of activity as before. The encroachment of water into Pavlopetri represents a gradual but decisive change, where natural processes reshape the boundaries of human space. It reflects the power of long-term environmental forces to alter even well-organized settlements, not through sudden destruction, but through steady transformation that unfolds over time. Beneath the water today, the pattern of this encroachment is still visible. The positioning of structures and the extent of the submerged area reveal how the sea moved into the city, gradually covering what was once dry land. This preserved record allows us to trace the progression of change and understand how the process unfolded across the settlement. As the sea continued its steady advance into Pavlopetri, the balance that once supported daily life began to shift beyond recovery. What had been a gradual process of adjustment and adaptation slowly reached a point where maintaining the settlement became increasingly difficult. The changes were no longer limited to the edges of the city, but had begun to affect its core spaces. At first, the response to these conditions would have been measured. People may have continued to adjust how they used the land, shifting activities toward areas that remained stable and avoiding those that had become unreliable. These changes would reflect a desire to maintain continuity, preserving daily routines for as long as possible, despite the shifting environment. Over time, however, the options available to the community would begin to narrow. Areas that were once central to daily life might become inaccessible, while others would require constant effort to maintain. The need to adapt would grow more demanding, requiring increasing attention and resources just to sustain basic activities. The presence of water within living spaces would create ongoing challenges. Ground that was once firm would no longer provide reliable support, and structures that had stood stable for years would begin to feel the effects of constant moisture. Even if the buildings themselves remained standing, the conditions around them would make continued use more difficult. As these challenges accumulated, the decision to remain in the settlement would become more complex. Each household would face its own considerations, balancing the effort required to adapt against the benefits of staying. For some, the connection to the land and the familiarity of the environment may have encouraged them to remain as long as possible. For others, the increasing instability would point toward the need to move. The process of leaving would not necessarily happen all at once. Instead, it would likely unfold gradually, with individuals or groups departing at different times as conditions continue to change. This staggered departure reflects the nature of the environmental shift itself, where change occurs over time rather than in a single moment. As people began to leave, the rhythm of the city would start to change. Spaces that were once active might become quiet, and areas that relied on regular use would begin to fall into disuse. The sense of community, shaped by interaction and shared activity, would gradually diminish as fewer people remained. The structures of the city, built to support daily life, would begin to stand without the presence of those who had given them purpose. Homes would no longer be maintained, courtyards would no longer host shared activity, and streets would no longer guide the steady movement of residents. The physical layout would remain, but the life within it would slowly fade. For those who remained longer, the environment would continue to present new challenges. Access to resources might become more limited, and the effort required to maintain even simple routines would increase. These conditions would reinforce the decision to leave, as the balance between effort and stability shifted further. The act of departure itself would likely involve taking what could be carried and leaving behind what could not. Objects that were essential or valuable might be removed, while heavier or less necessary items would remain. Over time, the settlement would retain traces of these decisions, with some elements preserved in place while others disappeared. As the final residents left, Pavlopetri would transition from a living settlement to an abandoned space. This transition would not be marked by a single event, but by the gradual absence of activity. The structures would remain, but without maintenance or use, they would become part of the changing environment. With no one left to adapt or respond, the city would be fully exposed to the ongoing effects of rising water and shifting conditions. The remaining dry areas would continue to diminish, and the boundary between land and sea would move further inward. What had once been a place of daily activity would become increasingly quiet and still. The absence of human presence would allow natural processes to take over completely. Sediment carried by the water would begin to settle across the surfaces of streets and buildings, gradually covering them. This process would not destroy the structures, but instead protect them, preserving their outlines beneath a layer of sand and silt. The transition from settlement to submerged site would be complete when the remaining structures were fully covered by water. At this point, Pavlopetri would no longer function as a place of habitation, but as part of the seabed itself. The city would remain in place, but its role would change entirely. What makes this process distinct is the absence of sudden destruction. There was no single moment when the city collapsed or was lost in an instant. Instead, Pavlopetri was shaped by a continuous process of change, where each stage led gradually to the next. This slow transformation allowed its structure to remain largely intact, preserving a clear record of its original form. Even after its abandonment, the layout of the city continued to reflect the lives that were once lived there. The arrangement of streets, buildings, and shared spaces remained as a quiet imprint of the community that had occupied it. Beneath the water, these patterns endure, offering a glimpse into a settlement that adapted for as long as it could before finally giving way to the environment around it. After the final departure of its residents, Pavlopetri entered a new phase shaped entirely by the natural environment. Without human activity to maintain or alter the settlement, the ongoing rise of the sea and the movement of sediment began to define its condition. What had once been a structured and active space gradually became part of the seabed. As water fully covered the remaining areas of the city, the distinction between land and sea disappeared completely. Streets that once guided movement were now beneath a layer of water, and buildings that had provided shelter stood submerged, their outlines softened by the surrounding environment. The transition was not abrupt, but the result of the same steady processes that had been unfolding over time. The water itself played a central role in preserving the city. Unlike exposure to air, where wind and temperature changes can cause rapid deterioration, the underwater environment creates more stable conditions. Once fully submerged, the structures of Pavlopetri were protected from many of the forces that would otherwise have caused them to break down more quickly. Sediment carried by the movement of water began to settle across the surfaces of the city. Fine particles of sand and silt would drift downward, gradually accumulating over streets, courtyards, and the remains of buildings. This process occurred slowly, with each layer adding to the protection of the structures beneath it. Over time, this accumulation of sediment created a covering that helped preserve the layout of the city. Rather than being eroded away, the outlines of buildings and streets remained in place beneath this layer. The sediment acted as a barrier, shielding the structures from direct exposure to currents and other forms of disturbance. The clarity of Pavlopetri's layout today is closely connected to this process of burial. Because the city was covered gradually and not subjected to sudden destruction, its original structure remained largely intact. The streets continue to trace their original paths, and the foundations of buildings still define their shapes beneath the sediment. The calm conditions of the surrounding water also contributed to this preservation. In areas where strong currents are present, submerged structures can be disrupted or scattered over time. In contrast, the waters around Pavlopetri are relatively gentle, allowing sediment to settle without being constantly disturbed. This stability has helped maintain the integrity of the site. As the sediment built up, certain features of the city would become less visible, while others remained partially exposed. This variation creates a layered view of the settlement, where some elements are clearly defined and others are more subtly indicated beneath the surface. This layering reflects the gradual nature of the burial process. The burial of the city did not erase its structure, but instead preserved it in a different form. What was once an active environment became a quiet and stable record of its own layout. The absence of ongoing human activity meant that nothing new was added to the site, allowing it to remain as it was at the time of its abandonment. The underwater environment also limited the impact of later disturbances. Without regular human presence, the site was not altered by construction, agriculture, or other activities that might have changed its structure. This isolation helped maintain the original arrangement of the city over long periods. The combination of submersion and sediment created conditions that are relatively rare in the preservation of ancient settlements. Many sites on land are subject to repeated change, with layers of activity building over one another. In contrast, Pavlopetri represents a single period preserved beneath the water, providing a clearer view of its original form. As time continued to pass, the city remained beneath the sea, largely undisturbed. The processes that had led to its submersion also ensured its preservation, creating a balance between change and stability. While the environment had transformed the city, it had also protected it from further alteration. The presence of water above the site creates a unique perspective on the remains of the city. Light filtering through the surface illuminates the outlines of streets and buildings, making them visible in a way that is both clear and softened by the surrounding environment. This visual quality adds to the sense that the city has been preserved rather than lost. The sediment covering the city continues to shift slightly over time, but not enough to disrupt its overall structure. Small changes may occur, revealing or concealing certain features, but the core layout remains stable. This ongoing balance allows the site to retain its form while still being part of a living environment. Pavlopetri now exists as a quiet record beneath the sea, where the processes of submersion and burial have worked together to preserve its structure. The city is no longer a place of activity, but it remains a clear and detailed example of early urban organization, held in place by the same natural forces that once led to its transformation. The stillness of the site today reflects the completion of this process. What was once shaped by movement, interaction, and daily life now rests beneath the water, its form intact and its history preserved within the layers of sediment that surround it. The survival of Pavlopetri beneath the sea is not the result of chance alone, but of a specific combination of environmental conditions that work together to preserve its structure. While many ancient settlements have been lost to erosion, rebuilding, or destruction, Pavlopetri remained largely intact because the same forces that submerged it also protected it over time. One of the most important factors in this preservation is the stability of the underwater environment. Beneath the surface, conditions tend to change more slowly than on land. There is less variation in temperature, and the absence of direct exposure to wind and air reduces the rate at which materials break down. This creates a setting where structures can remain in place for long periods without significant deterioration. The presence of sediment covering the city also plays a central role. As layers of sand and silt settled over the streets and buildings, they formed a protective barrier. This layer reduces the impact of currents and shields the structures from direct contact with moving water. Instead of being worn away, the outlines of the city are held in place beneath this covering. The calm nature of the surrounding waters contributes further to this stability. In more turbulent environments, strong currents can shift sediment and disturb submerged structures. At Pavlopetri, the relatively gentle movement of the sea allows the sediment to remain largely undisturbed. This consistency helps maintain the position of the buildings and streets over time. The shallow depth of the site is another important factor. Because Pavlopetri lies in relatively shallow water, sunlight is able to reach the seabed. While this does not directly affect preservation, it allows the structure of the city to remain visible. This visibility is part of what makes the site so valuable, as it can be observed in a way that deeper underwater locations cannot. The materials used in construction also contribute to the city's survival. The stone foundations of the buildings provide a strong and durable base that can withstand long-term exposure to water. Unlike organic materials, which may break down more quickly, stone remains stable under these conditions, preserving the outlines of structures even after thousands of years. Another factor in the preservation of Pavlopetri is the absence of later human activity. Many ancient sites on land are altered over time by new construction, agriculture, or other forms of development. In contrast, the submerged nature of Pavlopetri has limited access, reducing the likelihood of disturbance. This isolation has allowed the site to remain close to its original state. The way in which the city was submerged also plays a role in its preservation. Because the process was gradual rather than sudden, the structures were not destroyed or displaced. Instead, they remained in their original positions as the water slowly covered them. This allowed the layout of the city to be preserved in a clear and continuous form. The combination of these factors creates a unique set of conditions that are not often found together: stability, protection, limited disturbance, and durable materials all contribute to the survival of the site. Each element supports the others, creating an environment where preservation is possible over long periods. The result is a settlement that retains its original layout with remarkable clarity. Streets can still be traced, buildings can still be identified, and the overall structure of the city remains readable. This level of preservation provides a direct connection to the past, allowing the city to be studied in detail without the need for reconstruction. The preservation of Pavlopetri also highlights the importance of environmental context in the survival of ancient sites. It shows that the conditions surrounding a settlement can be just as important as the structures themselves in determining what remains over time. In this case, the environment did not erase the city, but instead became the means by which it was preserved. Even within the underwater setting, small variations continue to occur. Sediment may shift slightly, and minor changes in water movement can reveal or conceal certain features. However, these changes are limited and do not significantly alter the overall structure of the site. The core layout remains stable despite these small adjustments. The ability of Pavlopetri to survive in this way provides valuable insight into early urban development. Because the site has not been heavily altered, it offers a clearer view of how the city was originally organized. This makes it an important reference point for understanding other settlements that may not be as well preserved. The quiet conditions beneath the water create a sense of stillness around the site. This stillness reflects the long period of preservation that has taken place, where change occurs slowly and without disruption. The city remains as it was, held in place by the environment that surrounds it. Pavlopetri stands as an example of how preservation can occur through natural processes rather than intentional protection. The same forces that led to its submersion also created the conditions that allowed it to endure. This balance between change and stability is what makes the site both unique and valuable. The survival of the city beneath the sea allows it to continue as a record of early human activity. Its structure remains intact, its layout remains clear, and its connection to the past remains visible. Through these preserved features, Pavlopetri continues to offer insight into a world that once existed along the shifting boundary between land and sea. For many centuries, Pavlopetri remained hidden beneath the shallow waters of the Mediterranean, its streets and buildings resting quietly on the seabed without disturbance. The gradual nature of its submersion meant that there was no single dramatic moment of loss recorded in memory, and over time, the presence of the city faded from awareness. The landscape above the water continued to change, while beneath the surface, the structure of the settlement remained preserved and largely undisturbed. The rediscovery of Pavlopetri did not come through a single dramatic event, but through careful observation of the underwater environment. In clear and shallow coastal waters, patterns on the seabed can sometimes be seen from above. Subtle shapes and lines may suggest something more than natural formation, hinting at the presence of structures beneath the surface. At Pavlopetri, these patterns began to draw attention. The outlines of what appeared to be straight lines and organized shapes stood in contrast to the irregular forms typically created by natural processes. This distinction between natural and structured patterns is often the first indication that a site may have been shaped by human activity. Closer examination of the area revealed that these patterns were not isolated features, but part of a larger and more organized layout. As more of the seabed was observed, the presence of connected structures became clearer. Lines that resembled streets intersected with areas that suggested the outlines of buildings, forming a pattern consistent with a settlement rather than a random collection of stones. The recognition of these features marked an important step in identifying the site. What had initially appeared as unusual formations was now understood to be the remains of a submerged city. This shift in understanding transforms the way the site is viewed, turning it from part of the natural landscape into a place shaped by human activity. The shallow depth of the water made it possible to study the site more closely. Unlike deeper underwater locations that require complex equipment to access, Pavlopetri could be observed and explored with relative ease. This accessibility allowed for more detailed examination of the structures and their arrangement. Early observations focused on confirming the nature of the site. The presence of straight lines, defined spaces, and repeating patterns provided strong evidence that the structures were not natural. These features suggested intentional design, consistent with the layout of a settlement. As the site became more widely recognized, interest in its significance began to grow. The idea that an organized city existed beneath shallow coastal waters raised important questions about its age, its purpose, and the circumstances that led to its submersion. Each of these questions would guide further study and exploration. The process of identifying Pavlopetri as an ancient settlement also involved placing it within a broader historical context. By comparing its layout and features with other known sites, researchers could begin to understand how it related to patterns of early urban development. This comparison helps establish its importance as one of the earliest examples of an organized city. The clarity of the site played a key role in this process. Because the layout remained visible and largely intact, it was possible to trace the arrangement of streets and buildings with a high degree of confidence. This level of preservation made it easier to interpret the site and understand its structure. The rediscovery of Pavlopetri highlights the role of observation and recognition in uncovering the past. The city was not buried beneath layers of earth or hidden in a remote location, but present in a place where it could be seen, provided that its patterns were understood. This makes the process of discovery both subtle and significant. As attention focused on the site, efforts to document and understand it began to take shape. Initial observations would lead to more detailed study, building a clearer picture of the settlement and its features. Each stage of this process adds to the overall understanding of the city. The identification of Pavlopetri as a submerged city also changed the way the surrounding environment was viewed. What had been seen as part of the natural seabed was now recognized as a cultural landscape, shaped by human activity in the distant past. This shift in perspective is an important part of archaeological discovery. Over time, the site gained recognition as a place of significance, not only for its preservation, but also for what it represents. As one of the earliest known submerged cities, Pavlopetri provides a rare opportunity to study early urban organization in a form that has remained largely unchanged. The rediscovery of the city reconnects the present with a distant past, bringing attention to a settlement that had long been separated from human awareness. Beneath the calm waters, the outlines of streets and buildings remain as a quiet reminder of a community that once existed along the coastline. The process of rediscovery does not end with identification. Instead, it opens the way for further exploration, study, and understanding. Pavlopetri, once unnoticed beneath the surface, becomes a focus of ongoing interest, offering new insights into the relationship between human settlements and the changing environment. Through careful observation and recognition, the city has moved from being an unnoticed feature of the seabed to a significant example of early urban life. Its rediscovery allows it to be understood not as a lost place, but as a preserved one, where the past remains visible beneath the surface of the present. Following the recognition of Pavlopetri as a submerged settlement, the focus gradually shifted from observation to structured study. What had first appeared as patterns beneath the water now required careful examination to understand their full meaning. This transition marked the beginning of archaeological work, where the goal was not only to observe the site, but to document, interpret, and preserve its details. Early research began with direct visual examination of the seabed. Because the site lies in shallow and clear water, it was possible to study the layout in a relatively straightforward way. Researchers could move across the area, tracing the outlines of streets and buildings while recording their positions. This process allowed the first detailed impressions of the city's structure to take shape. The identification of organized streets was one of the most important early findings. These linear features confirmed that the site was not a random collection of remains, but a planned settlement. The presence of intersecting routes suggested a level of urban organization that aligned with early forms of city development. This discovery helped establish Pavlopetri as a significant example of structured habitation. Alongside the streets, the outlines of buildings were carefully noted. The stone foundations provided clear boundaries, allowing researchers to identify individual structures and their arrangement within the city. By mapping these foundations, it became possible to understand how space was divided and how different areas of the settlement were used. Courtyards and open spaces were also identified during this stage of study. These areas, located between buildings, indicated shared zones within the settlement. Their presence reinforced the idea that Pavlopetri was not only organized for function, but also for interaction. This added another layer to the understanding of how the community operated. As documentation continued, researchers began to consider how the different elements of the city related to one another. Streets connected buildings, courtyards linked shared spaces, and the overall layout formed a coherent pattern. This interconnected structure is a key feature of early urban environments, where organization supports both movement and daily activity. The process of recording the site required careful attention to detail. Measurements were taken to determine the size and orientation of structures, while sketches and notes captured the arrangement of features across the seabed. Each observation contributed to a growing body of information that would later be used to create more complete representations of the city. Understanding the age of the site became another important focus of early research. By examining the style of construction and comparing it with other known settlements, researchers could begin to place Pavlopetri within a broader historical timeline. This process helps establish its significance as one of the earliest examples of organized urban space. The study of materials also provided insight into how the city was built. The use of stone foundations indicated a preference for durability, while the layout of structures suggested practical design choices. These observations connect the physical remains of the city to the methods and knowledge of the people who constructed it. As research progressed, attention was given not only to individual features, but to the overall pattern of the settlement. The consistent organization of streets and buildings suggested a planned approach rather than unstructured growth. This level of consistency is an important indicator of early urban planning. The underwater setting of Pavlopetri presented both opportunities and challenges for study. The clarity of the water allowed features to be seen directly, but the presence of sediment and the need to work beneath the surface required careful handling. Researchers had to balance the desire to explore the site with the need to preserve its condition. Documentation became a central part of the research process. By recording the layout in detail, it was possible to create a lasting representation of the site that could be studied even without direct access to the seabed. This step is essential in archaeology, where preservation and understanding must go hand in hand. As more information was gathered, the picture of Pavlopetri became clearer. The city was no longer understood simply as a collection of submerged structures, but as a coherent settlement with defined organization. Each piece of data contributed to this understanding, building a more complete view of how the city once functioned. The early stages of archaeological study laid the foundation for more advanced methods that would follow. By establishing the layout, identifying key features, and recording the site in detail, researchers created a framework that could be expanded upon using newer techniques. This progression reflects the evolving nature of archaeological work. The importance of preserving the site remained a constant consideration throughout this process. Because Pavlopetri is both accessible and fragile, it requires careful management to ensure that study does not lead to damage. This balance between exploration and preservation is a key aspect of working with underwater sites. Through these early efforts, Pavlopetri moved from being a newly identified location to a site of structured research. Its streets, buildings, and shared spaces were no longer simply observed, but understood as part of a larger system. This shift allowed the city to be studied not only for what it is, but for what it represents within the history of early urban development. The work carried out during this stage continues to support ongoing research, providing a detailed record that can be revisited and expanded. Pavlopetri remains a place where careful study reveals new layers of understanding, connecting the preserved layout beneath the water to the lives that once unfolded within it. As the study of Pavlopetri continued, the methods used to understand the site began to evolve. Early observations and manual recordings had established the basic layout of the city, but new approaches made it possible to capture far more detail. These advances allowed researchers to move beyond simple mapping and begin building more complete representations of the settlement as it once existed. The development of digital mapping techniques marked a significant step forward in the study of the site. Instead of relying only on sketches and measurements, researchers could now use technology to record the exact position of structures with greater precision. This process involves capturing detailed data from the seabed and translating it into a form that can be studied and analyzed more easily. By combining multiple observations, it became possible to create a full map of the city's layout. Streets, buildings, and open spaces could be traced with accuracy, showing how each part of the settlement connected to the others. This level of detail allows for a clearer understanding of how the city was organized and how it functioned as a whole. Digital reconstruction builds on this mapping by using the recorded data to recreate the city in a virtual form. These reconstructions do not simply show where structures are located, but attempt to represent how they may have appeared when they were still in use. Walls, pathways, and open areas can be visualized in a way that brings the layout to life. This process begins with the careful collection of measurements from the site. Each structure is recorded in terms of size, position, and orientation. These measurements are then combined to form a digital model that reflects the overall layout of the city. The accuracy of this model depends on the quality of the data collected, making precise observation an essential part of the process. As the digital model takes shape, it allows researchers to explore the site in new ways. Instead of viewing the city only from above or at water level, it becomes possible to examine it from different perspectives. This flexibility helps reveal patterns and relationships that may not be immediately visible in the physical environment. The use of digital tools also makes it easier to share the site with others. Detailed models can be viewed and studied without the need to travel to the location itself. This expands access to the site, allowing more people to engage with its structure and significance. It also supports collaboration, as researchers from different places can work with the same data. Reconstruction is not limited to the physical layout of the city. It can also include interpretations of how spaces were used. By examining the arrangement of buildings and open areas, it is possible to suggest how different parts of the settlement functioned. While these interpretations are based on available evidence, they also require careful consideration of how early communities organized their environments. The clarity of Pavlopetri's preservation makes it particularly well suited to this type of reconstruction. Because the layout remains intact, the data used to build digital models is more complete than at many other sites. This allows for reconstructions that are both detailed and reliable, providing a strong foundation for further study. Digital mapping also helps identify features that may not be immediately obvious. Subtle variations in the seabed can reveal structures that are partially covered by sediment. By analyzing the data carefully, researchers can detect these features and include them in the overall model of the city. This process adds depth to the understanding of the site. The ability to revisit and refine digital models is another advantage of this approach. As new data is collected, it can be incorporated into existing models, improving their accuracy over time. This ongoing process reflects the evolving nature of research, where each new observation contributes to a more complete picture. These technological methods do not replace traditional observation, but build upon it. The combination of direct study and digital reconstruction creates a more comprehensive understanding of the site. Each method supports the other, linking physical evidence with detailed representation. Through these advances, Pavlopetri becomes more than a submerged site. It becomes a place that can be explored, analyzed, and understood in ways that were not previously possible. The digital representation allows the city to be studied as a complete system, revealing how its different parts fit together. The use of mapping and reconstruction also highlights the importance of preserving the site. Accurate data depends on the condition of the structures, making it essential to protect the environment in which they exist. This connection between preservation and study reinforces the need for careful management of the site. As these methods continue to develop, they provide new ways to engage with the past. Pavlopetri can be viewed not only as it appears today beneath the water, but as it may have looked when it was still an active settlement. This ability to connect the present condition of the site with its past form adds depth to its significance. The combination of detailed mapping and digital reconstruction allows Pavlopetri to be understood with a level of clarity that is rarely possible for ancient sites. Its structure, preserved beneath the sea, can be translated into a form that reveals both its physical layout and its role as a functioning community. Through these methods, the city continues to offer new insights. Each layer of data adds to the understanding of how it was built, how it was used, and how it changed over time. The result is a representation that connects careful observation with modern technology, bringing the preserved remains of Pavlopetri into clearer focus. As the study of Pavlopetri expanded through detailed mapping and reconstruction, the site began to reveal insights that extend beyond its physical structure. It became clear that the city is not only important for its preservation, but also for what it shows about early human organization. The information gathered from its layout, materials, and environmental context contributes to a broader understanding of how early settlements developed and adapted over time. One of the most significant aspects of Pavlopetri is its clear example of early urban planning. The arrangement of streets, buildings, and shared spaces reflects intentional design rather than unstructured growth. This suggests that even in early periods, communities were capable of organizing their environments in ways that supported both efficiency and stability. The presence of defined routes and group structures shows that planning was an active part of settlement development. The site also provides insight into how early communities balance private and shared space. The layout of homes alongside courtyards and open areas indicates a structured approach to living, where individual households existed within a connected system. This balance is a key feature of organized settlements, showing how social and spatial relationships were integrated into the design of the city. Pavlopetri offers valuable information about the relationship between human activity and the environment. Its location near the coastline provided access to resources and trade opportunities, but also exposed it to long-term environmental change. The gradual submersion of the city demonstrates how natural processes can influence the course of human settlement, shaping where and how people live. The preservation of the site allows these relationships to be studied with unusual clarity. Because the layout remains intact, it is possible to observe how different elements of the city were positioned in relation to one another and to the surrounding environment. This level of detail provides a clearer picture of how early settlements functioned as complete systems. The study of Pavlopetri also contributes to understanding the development of trade networks. Its coastal position and organized structure suggest that it was part of a wider system of exchange. By examining the layout and considering its connection to the shoreline, researchers can infer how goods and people may have moved through the settlement and beyond it. Another important aspect of the site is its contribution to the study of construction techniques. The use of stone foundations and the consistent arrangement of buildings reflect a practical approach to building that emphasizes durability and organization. These features provide evidence of the knowledge and skills available to the people who built the city. The site also highlights the importance of gradual environmental change in shaping human history. Unlike settlements that were destroyed suddenly, Pavlopetri was affected by processes that unfolded over long periods. This slow transformation allows researchers to study how communities respond to changing conditions, offering insight into adaptation and resilience. The clarity of Pavlopetri's preservation makes it a valuable reference point for comparing other sites. In many cases, ancient settlements have been altered or partially destroyed, making it difficult to interpret their original layout. Pavlopetri, by contrast, retains a clear structure that can be used to understand patterns that may also be present in less well-preserved locations. The study of the site also contributes to broader discussions about early urbanization. By providing a detailed example of an organized settlement from an early period, Pavlopetri helps define what constitutes a city in its early stages. This contributes to ongoing efforts to understand how and when complex forms of settlement first emerged. The integration of environmental data with archaeological study further enhances the significance of the site. By examining both the physical remains of the city and the processes that led to its submersion, researchers can build a more complete understanding of its history. This combined approach reflects the interconnected nature of human activity and the natural world. Pavlopetri also demonstrates the value of preservation in advancing knowledge. Because the site has remained largely undisturbed, it offers a level of detail that is rarely available. This allows for more accurate interpretation and reduces the need for speculation, grounding conclusions in observable evidence. The information gained from studying the site extends beyond the specific context of Pavlopetri. It contributes to a broader understanding of how early communities organized space, managed resources, and interacted with their environment. These insights can be applied to other locations, helping to build a more comprehensive picture of early human settlement. The site also encourages reflection on the long-term relationship between humans and changing environments. The gradual submersion of the city highlights the impact of natural processes that continue to affect coastal regions today. By studying how Pavlopetri was shaped by these changes, it becomes possible to consider similar patterns in other contexts. Through its preservation and the insights it provides, Pavlopetri stands as a valuable source of knowledge about early urban life. It shows how organization, environment, and adaptation come together to shape the development of settlements. The city is not only a record of the past, but also a source of understanding that continues to inform the study of human history. The significance of Pavlopetri lies in both what it is and what it reveals. Its structure offers a clear example of early planning, while its history reflects the influence of long-term environmental change. Together, these elements create a detailed and meaningful picture of a settlement that continues to contribute to the understanding of early urban development. As understanding of Pavlopetri has grown, its importance has extended beyond its immediate location. The city is not only significant within its region, but also within the wider study of ancient settlements across the world. Its preservation, clarity, and early date place it among a small group of sites that offer direct insight into how organized communities developed in the distant past. What sets Pavlopetri apart from many other lost cities is the way it was preserved. In many cases, ancient settlements are buried beneath layers of soil, rebuilt over time, or damaged by later activity. This can make it difficult to determine their original layout. Pavlopetri, by contrast, remains largely intact beneath the water, with its streets and buildings still clearly defined. This allows it to be studied in a form that is closer to its original state. When compared to other submerged sites, Pavlopetri also stands out for its age. Many underwater settlements belong to later periods, often associated with more developed societies. Pavlopetri, however, represents an earlier stage of urban organization. This makes it particularly valuable for understanding how the earliest forms of structured living began to take shape. The clarity of the site also allows for more direct comparison with settlements that exist on land. By examining the layout of Pavlopetri alongside other early communities, it becomes possible to identify shared patterns in how space was organized. Features such as streets, grouped buildings, and shared areas appear in multiple locations, suggesting that certain approaches to settlement were widely used. At the same time, Pavlopetri highlights differences that can occur between sites. The influence of the coastal environment, the gradual process of submersion, and the level of preservation all contribute to its unique character. These differences help expand the understanding of how various factors shape the development and survival of settlements. The study of Pavlopetri also contributes to the broader idea of lost cities. The term often brings to mind places that were suddenly destroyed or abandoned due to dramatic events. Pavlopetri presents a different example, where the loss of the city occurred gradually through environmental change. This contrast adds depth to the concept of what it means for a city to be lost. In addition to its archaeological value, Pavlopetri holds importance as part of cultural heritage. It represents a connection to early human activity in a specific region, preserving evidence of how people once lived along the coastline. This connection extends beyond academic study, linking the site to a broader understanding of human history. The accessibility of Pavlopetri also contributes to its global significance. Because it lies in shallow water, it can be observed and studied more easily than many other underwater sites. This accessibility allows for ongoing research and helps maintain interest in the site as new methods and technologies are developed. The comparison between Pavlopetri and other ancient settlements also highlights the role of preservation in shaping what is known about the past. Sites that remain intact provide clearer information, while those that have been altered require more interpretation. Pavlopetri's condition allows it to serve as a reference point, helping to interpret less complete sites by comparison. The global importance of the city is further supported by its contribution to multiple areas of study. It is relevant not only to archaeology, but also to fields that examine environmental change, early urban development, and human adaptation. This broad relevance makes it a valuable source of information across different disciplines. As interest in underwater archaeology continues to grow, Pavlopetri remains an important example of what can be preserved beneath the sea. It demonstrates that submerged sites are not necessarily lost in the sense of being destroyed, but can instead remain as stable records of past activity. This perspective encourages further exploration of similar environments. The presence of Pavlopetri within the wider group of ancient settlements also reinforces the idea that early communities were more connected and organized than might be assumed. Its structure shows that planning and coordination were already present, contributing to a more complete understanding of early human development. The ability to compare Pavlopetri with other sites also allows for a more detailed examination of how settlements change over time. By studying both preserved and altered locations, it becomes possible to identify patterns in development, adaptation, and decline. Pavlopetri plays an important role in this process by providing a clear and stable example. Through these comparisons, the city contributes to a broader narrative about human settlement. It shows that the development of organized communities is not limited to a single place or time, but part of a wider pattern that appears across different regions. Pavlopetri represents one part of this pattern, preserved in a way that allows it to be studied in detail. The global importance of Pavlopetri lies in its ability to connect these different perspectives. It is both a specific place with its own history and a representative example of early urban organization. Its preservation allows it to bridge the gap between individual site study and broader understanding. As research continues, Pavlopetri remains a key reference point in the study of lost and submerged cities. Its clear structure, early date, and stable condition make it an essential part of the ongoing effort to understand how human settlements have developed and changed over time. As the structure of Pavlopetri has been carefully studied and preserved, the city begins to offer more than just physical information about its layout. It provides insight into how early humans thought, organized, and adapted to the world around them. The arrangement of space, the choice of location, and the response to environmental change all reflect patterns of behavior that help define early human communities. One of the clearest insights from Pavlopetri is the presence of intentional organization. The city was not formed by chance, but through deliberate decisions about how space should be used. Streets connect different areas in a logical way. Buildings are arranged with purpose, and shared spaces are placed where interaction would naturally occur. This level of planning suggests that early communities were already capable of thinking beyond immediate needs and considering how to create stable living environments. The structure of the city also reflects an understanding of balance between individual and collective life. Homes provide defined private spaces, while courtyards and open areas support shared activity. This balance shows that early humans were not only focused on survival, but also on maintaining social connections and cooperation within a structured environment. The location of Pavlopetri reveals how early communities interacted with their surroundings. Choosing a coastal setting provided access to resources, movement, and trade. This decision reflects an awareness of opportunity, where the benefits of proximity to the sea were recognized and used to support daily life. At the same time, it also shows how these choices carry long-term consequences, as the same environment that offered advantages eventually contributed to the city's transformation. The response to gradual environmental change provides another important insight. The city was not abandoned suddenly, but adapted over time as conditions shifted. This suggests that the people living there were attentive to their environment and capable of adjusting their behavior in response to change. Adaptation appears as a process, not a single decision, reflecting a flexible approach to living in a dynamic setting. The eventual departure from the city also reflects decision-making shaped by changing conditions. As the balance between stability and effort shifted, the choice to leave would have been influenced by the increasing difficulty of maintaining daily life. This shows that early humans were able to recognize when an environment was no longer sustainable and respond accordingly. Pavlopetri also provides insight into cooperation as a fundamental part of community life. The organization of the settlement suggests that building and maintaining the city required shared effort. Streets, structures, and shared spaces all point to a coordinated approach where individuals contributed to a larger system. This cooperation would have been essential for both construction and daily function. The consistency of the layout across the city suggests that knowledge was shared among its residents. Construction methods, spatial organization, and patterns of movement appear to follow common principles. This indicates that ideas were not isolated, but communicated and applied across the settlement, creating a unified environment. The presence of trade connections further expands the understanding of early human behavior. Participation in a wider network shows that communities were not isolated, but engaged with others beyond their immediate surroundings. This interaction would bring new materials, ideas, and influences, contributing to the development of the settlement over time. The ability to organize space efficiently is another key insight provided by Pavlopetri. The arrangement of buildings and streets shows an understanding of how to use limited space effectively. This efficiency reflects practical thinking, where the layout supports movement, access, and daily activity without unnecessary complexity. The preservation of the city allows these patterns to be observed directly, rather than inferred from incomplete remains. Because the layout remains clear, it is possible to see how different elements of the settlement relate to one another. This direct observation provides stronger evidence of how early communities functioned. Pavlopetri also highlights the importance of long-term thinking in early human behavior. The use of durable materials, the organization of space, and the development of a structured environment all suggest an investment in the future. The city was built not just for immediate use, but for continued occupation over time. At the same time, the history of the city shows the limits of control over the environment. Despite careful planning and adaptation, the long-term changes in sea level and coastline eventually reshaped the settlement. This reflects the balance between human intention and natural processes, where both play a role in shaping outcomes. The study of Pavlopetri contributes to a broader understanding of how early humans interacted with both their environment and each other. It shows that organization, cooperation, and adaptation were already present, forming the foundation for more complex developments in later periods. The city also provides a reminder that early communities were dynamic rather than static. They responded to changing conditions, adjusted their behavior, and made decisions based on both opportunity and limitation. This dynamic quality is an essential part of understanding how human settlements evolve. Through its preserved structure and history, Pavlopetri offers a detailed view of early human behavior. It shows how people created order within their environment, how they worked together to maintain it, and how they responded when conditions began to change. These patterns continue to inform the understanding of early human development. The insights gained from the city extend beyond its physical remains, offering a deeper understanding of how early communities functioned. Pavlopetri stands as a record of human organization, adaptation, and interaction, preserved beneath the sea in a form that continues to reveal new layers of meaning. The story of Pavlopetri does not end with its preservation beneath the sea. Although the city belongs to a distant past, the processes that shaped its transformation continue to operate in the present. The gradual rise of sea levels, the shifting of coastlines, and the interaction between human settlements and the environment remain part of the modern world. In this way, Pavlopetri offers more than historical insight, as it reflects patterns that are still unfolding today. Coastal regions across the world continue to experience changes in sea level, influenced by long-term environmental processes. While the pace and causes may vary, the overall effect remains similar, as water gradually reshapes the boundary between land and sea. For communities located near coastlines, this creates conditions that require awareness, planning, and adaptation. The gradual nature of these changes makes them difficult to perceive in the short term. Just as in Pavlopetri, where the advance of the sea occurred over extended periods, modern changes often take place slowly enough to be overlooked in daily life. However, when observed over longer timeframes, these shifts become more apparent, revealing patterns that can influence how settlements develop and change. Pavlopetri provides a clear example of how a coastal settlement can be affected by these processes. Its history shows that even well-organized communities are not separate from the natural systems around them. The same factors that supported the city, such as access to the sea, also contributed to its transformation over time. This connection highlights the importance of understanding the long-term relationship between human activity and the environment. Modern settlements face similar challenges, particularly in areas where land lies close to sea level. Changes in water levels can affect infrastructure, access to resources, and the stability of the land itself. These conditions require careful planning to ensure that communities can continue to function as the environment changes. The experience of Pavlopetri suggests that adaptation is a gradual process rather than a single response. Adjustments may begin with small changes in how space is used or how structures are maintained. Over time, these adjustments may need to become more significant, reflecting the ongoing nature of environmental change. This progression mirrors the pattern observed in the ancient settlement. The eventual abandonment of Pavlopetri also provides insight into the limits of adaptation. While communities can adjust to changing conditions, there may come a point where maintaining a settlement becomes increasingly difficult. Recognizing this point requires an understanding of both the environment and the needs of the community. This balance remains relevant in modern contexts, where decisions about relocation or restructuring may need to be considered. The preservation of Pavlopetri beneath the sea allows it to serve as a reference for these processes. Its structure provides a record of how a settlement was gradually affected by environmental change, offering a perspective that can inform current understanding. By examining the patterns visible in the city, it becomes possible to consider how similar processes might unfold in other locations. The study of such sites contributes to a broader awareness of environmental change. It connects past events with present conditions, showing that the interaction between land and sea is part of a continuous process. This perspective encourages a long-term view, where changes are understood not as isolated events, but as part of an ongoing pattern. Modern technology allows these patterns to be observed and measured with increasing accuracy. Data on sea levels, coastal movement, and environmental conditions can be used to track changes over time. This information supports planning and decision-making, helping communities respond to evolving conditions in a more informed way. Pavlopetri adds depth to this understanding by providing a tangible example of what long-term change can produce. Its preserved layout shows the result of gradual transformation, where the accumulation of small shifts leads to a significant outcome. This reinforces the idea that slow processes can have lasting effects. The connection between past and present also highlights the importance of awareness. Understanding how environmental systems operate allows for more effective responses to change. Pavlopetri demonstrates that these systems have been influencing human settlements for thousands of years, making their study relevant across time. The calm and stable appearance of the submerged city contrasts with the dynamic processes that shaped it. Beneath the still surface, the history of change is recorded in the position and condition of the structures. This contrast reflects the way in which long-term processes can produce outcomes that appear steady, even though they result from continuous movement. The lessons drawn from Pavlopetri are not limited to a single place or time. They apply to any setting where human activity interacts with natural systems. By observing how the city was shaped by its environment, it becomes possible to better understand the challenges and opportunities that exist in similar conditions today. The relevance of Pavlopetri lies in its ability to connect these ideas. It shows that the relationship between humans and the environment is ongoing, shaped by both intention and natural processes. This connection continues to influence how settlements develop, adapt, and respond to change. Through its preserved structure and history, Pavlopetri remains a quiet reminder that the forces shaping the past are still present in the world today. Its story reflects patterns that continue to unfold, linking ancient experience with modern understanding in a way that remains both subtle and enduring. Beneath the calm surface of the water, Pavlopetri remains as a quiet and enduring presence. Its streets, buildings, and open spaces rest in stillness, unchanged in their arrangement, even as time continues to move forward above them. The city no longer functions as a place of daily life, yet its structure continues to hold the imprint of the people who once lived there. What makes Pavlopetri remarkable is not only its age or its preservation, but the clarity with which it presents a complete environment. The layout of the city remains readable, allowing its structure to be understood without the need for reconstruction or assumption. This clarity creates a direct connection to the past, where the organization of space reflects the choices and patterns of those who built it. The city represents a moment in time that has been held in place. While many settlements are altered through layers of activity, Pavlopetri remains largely as it was when it was last occupied. This stillness allows it to serve as a reference point, offering insight into how early communities created order within their surroundings. Its streets suggest movement that has long since ceased, yet their paths remain clear. Buildings outline spaces that once held activity, now defined only by their foundations. Courtyards that once brought people together remain open, their purpose visible even in the absence of those who used them. Each element contributes to a sense of continuity, where the structure of the city reflects the rhythm of life that once unfolded within it. The preservation of Pavlopetri also highlights the balance between change and stability. The forces that led to its submersion continue to operate, yet the result is a site that has remained intact. This balance creates a unique condition where transformation has led not to loss, but to preservation in a different form. The absence of modern alteration allows the city to exist as a complete and uninterrupted record. Without rebuilding or later construction, the layout remains consistent, providing a clear view of its original design. This consistency allows for a deeper understanding of how space was organized and how the settlement functioned as a whole. Pavlopetri also reflects the broader patterns of human settlement. The organization of streets, the grouping of buildings, and the presence of shared spaces all point to common principles that appear across different regions and periods. The city becomes part of a larger story about how humans create structure within their environment. At the same time, its history shows how these structures remain connected to the natural world. The gradual rise of the sea reshaped the city, demonstrating that even well-planned environments exist within systems that extend beyond human control. This connection between human intention and natural process is a central part of the city's legacy. The quiet state of Pavlopetri today invites reflection on the passage of time. What was once active is now still, yet the transition between these states is not defined by a single event. Instead, it is the result of continuous change, where each small shift contributes to a larger transformation. This gradual process is preserved in the position of the city beneath the water. The site also offers a sense of continuity between past and present. Although separated by time, the patterns visible in Pavlopetri remain familiar. The organization of space, the need for connection, and the response to environmental change are all elements that continue to shape human experience. In this way, the city remains relevant, not as an isolated example, but as part of an ongoing pattern. The clarity of its preservation allows these connections to be observed directly. There is no need to imagine the structure of the city as it remains visible beneath the surface. This directness strengthens its role as a source of understanding, linking observation with interpretation in a clear and stable way. Pavlopetri stands as a reminder that the past is not always lost, but can be preserved in ways that allow it to be revisited and understood. Its structure remains intact, its layout remains clear, and its connection to early human activity remains visible. Through this preservation, the city continues to contribute to the understanding of how settlements are created, organized, and transformed. The stillness of the site reflects the completion of its transformation. What was once shaped by movement and interaction now rests quietly beneath the water, its form unchanged. This stillness is not empty, but filled with the traces of a community that once existed within its boundaries. The legacy of Pavlopetri lies in its ability to show both what was and how it changed. It provides a clear example of early organization, while also reflecting the influence of long-term environmental processes. Together, these elements create a detailed and lasting record of a settlement shaped by both human intention and natural forces. Through its preserved form, Pavlopetri continues to offer insight into the past, connecting structure, environment, and behavior in a way that remains visible and accessible. Its presence beneath the sea is both quiet and enduring, holding a story that unfolds through observation rather than words. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you enjoyed learning about Pavlopetri.